At 1 a.m., I heard the balcony door slide. A man's voice said, "You said he was out of town." She begged me to listen. It was just after 1 a.m. when I woke to the faint scrape of the balcony door sliding open. At first, I thought I'd imagined it. Our apartment overlooked the city, 20 stories up, and the only reason anyone would touch that door was to smoke or to let in the night air. But I knew Brianna didn't smoke. She hated even the smell of it. Then I heard the voice. A man's voice. Low, confident, too casual for the hour. "You said he was out of town." I froze. The sheets suddenly felt suffocating, like they were trying to pin me down. I wanted to believe I'd misheard, but the words had weight. They weren't random. They were intimate, whispered like the kind of secret only two people share when they shouldn't. I pushed myself upright in bed, moving slowly, careful not to make a sound. The wall between our bedroom and the balcony was thin, the glass sliding door just around the corner. I didn't step into view. Instead, I stopped in the darkened hallway, listening. Brianna's voice followed, hushed, urgent. "Keep it down. He's asleep." My chest tightened. My fiancé was telling another man to stay quiet because I was in the next room. I should have stormed out right then. I should have torn the door open and ended it. But something in me, maybe disbelief, maybe anger too sharp to act on, told me to wait. If I went in blind, all I'd have was a confrontation. If I stayed quiet, maybe I'd get answers. The man chuckled softly, almost mocking. "Relax. You worry too much. You told me he'd be gone until Monday." There was a pause. I pictured her standing there in the dim light, arms crossed, caught between thrill and fear. Then came a detail I hadn't expected. He called her by a different name. Not Brianna. Something else. It was quick, a slip, but I heard it clearly. A single word that didn't belong to the woman I knew. That snapped me out of my fog. I stepped forward, deliberately this time, and slid the bedroom door wide open. The sound was sharp, impossible to ignore. Both of them turned. He was taller than me, broad-shouldered, wearing a button-down half untucked like he'd come from work and never bothered changing. His face shifted instantly from smug amusement to startled calculation. She, on the other hand, looked like she'd been caught stealing. Neither moved for a second. Then she whispered, "Elliot, please listen." But the man didn't wait. He brushed past her, muttering something under his breath, and headed straight for the door. On the way out, his pocket caught on the coffee table. Something clattered onto the floor, keys, a plastic card attached to them. He didn't notice, or maybe he didn't care. The door slammed behind him. I stood there staring at Brianna. Her lips trembled, but her eyes were calculating, darting between me and the keys on the ground. "Don't," I said. My voice didn't even sound like mine. "Don't touch them." She froze. I bent down and picked them up. The keys themselves were unremarkable, but the plastic card hooked to them wasn't. It was a company badge. His photo. His name. The logo of the same firm where Brianna worked. I didn't say a word. I just held it up so she could see. Her face went pale. "It's not what you think," she blurted out. Too fast, too rehearsed. He's just... But she couldn't finish. She knew I wasn't buying it. Instead of yelling, instead of demanding explanations, I walked past her, went back to the bedroom, and shut the door. My hands were shaking, but my head was clearer than it had ever been. Anger wanted me to go after the guy. Pain wanted me to hear her excuses. But neither would get me the truth. I lay there in the dark, badge in hand, staring at the name. Curtis. Same company as Brianna. Same office floor. That much was obvious. But the slip-up with her name, what the hell was that? When she finally came in, she tried again. "Please, Elliot." It was a mistake. He had too much to drink. He showed up. I was trying to make him leave. I cut her off. "Don't insult me." Silence. She didn't press further. She curled up on the far edge of the bed, her back to me. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. By morning, she acted like nothing had happened. She made coffee, hummed to herself in the kitchen, even kissed me lightly on the cheek before heading to work. As if the man on our balcony was just a bad dream. But I still had his badge. That day, instead of going into my own office, I sat in my car outside hers. It was one of those faceless glass towers downtown, dozens of companies stacked together. Employees streamed in and out, most with the same kind of badge. And there he was. Curtis. I recognized him instantly from the photo. He didn't look shaken. If anything, he looked smug, confident, walking with a group of colleagues like nothing unusual had happened the night before. I watched him for hours, making notes. When he went out for lunch, I followed at a distance. He wasn't just some fling. He carried himself like someone who thought he was untouchable. That night, Brianna came home late. She claimed a project deadline had kept her tied up. I pretended to believe her. Inside, I was cataloging every detail. The change of clothes she hadn't accounted for. The faint cologne that wasn't mine lingering on her skin. The receipt she'd carelessly left in her purse for a restaurant she never mentioned. Piece by piece, a picture was forming. She wasn't just cheating. She was covering tracks, spinning lies, juggling time. And Curtis wasn't some random mistake. He was woven into her daily routine. But that wasn't the part that kept me awake the second night. It was the name. When Curtis whispered it on the balcony, Brianna hadn't corrected him. She hadn't flinched. She'd answered to it. So who the hell was she, really? By the end of the week, I'd mapped out enough to see the pattern. Curtis wasn't her first late-night excuse. He was just the first one sloppy enough to get caught. And the badge in my pocket was proof that he wasn't going away anytime soon. I didn't know it then, but the keys attached to it weren't just to his apartment. They were to something much bigger, a secret he hadn't meant to leave behind. And that was the start of everything unraveling. The badge sat in my jacket pocket all week like a live grenade. Every time I felt the hard edge of the plastic press against my fingers, I thought about the balcony at 1 a.m., the slip of a stranger's voice calling my fiancée by another name, and the way she froze when she realized I had proof. I didn't tell Brianna I'd followed Curtis. She'd grown comfortable in her routine, believing that I'd swallowed her story about late nights and last-minute project meetings. But when she left in the morning, I left too, just not to my office. I parked near her building and watched. The tower gleamed in the sun, people coming and going in waves, the same buzzing hive of suits and lanyards every day. And then Curtis appeared. In daylight, he didn't look like the intruder from my balcony. He looked polished. His suit fit perfectly, his tie was expensive, his shoes spotless. He carried a leather briefcase and walked with the easy confidence of someone who expected the world to accommodate him. But I knew better. I followed him once more at lunch. He didn't go to the fast casual chain nearby or grab a sandwich like most employees. He took a short drive to a quieter part of the district, parked behind a wine bar that didn't even open until the evening, and met someone inside. Through the tinted glass, I couldn't see much, but I saw the outline of a woman, her posture sharp, deliberate. Not Brianna. That alone sent my mind spinning. Was Curtis playing the same game she was? Did Brianna know she wasn't the only one? I waited until he came out, alone this time, his phone to his ear. He walked back to his car with the same unbothered stride, and I caught the faintest piece of his conversation through my cracked window. Don't worry, she still thinks it's just us. I didn't know if he meant Brianna or someone else, but the words locked into my brain like a trigger. That night, when Brianna came home, she was all warmth and laughter, telling me about the impossible client who demanded late revisions. She poured wine, cooked pasta, kissed me on the cheek again like nothing was broken. I smiled back, played along. Every word she gave me was another thread in the rope she didn't realize she was tightening around herself. The next morning, I decided to test her. I asked about Curtis. Not directly, just dropped his name casually, pretending I'd read something about her company's leadership online. Her reaction was instantaneous. She blinked, smiled too quickly, and said he was just some mid-level guy, barely in the office. Which was strange, because I'd watched him walk in with half the floor greeting him like he was in charge. I let it slide. Later that day, I searched the company directory. His profile wasn't buried at all. He was listed as a project manager on one of their biggest accounts. His photo matched the badge, his title carried weight, and his LinkedIn painted the picture of a man with influence, money, and connections. If Brianna wanted stability, Curtis offered it. If she wanted thrills, he gave those too. But why the slip of another name on the balcony? I dug deeper. Not into Curtis this time, but into her. Brianna had always been careful with her past. She mentioned an ex or two, but in vague terms, never names, never stories. She liked to describe herself as someone who moved on quickly, didn't dwell. At first, I admired that. Now it felt like camouflage. I went back through old posts, half-forgotten corners of the internet. That's when I found it. Buried in a forum that hadn't been updated in years was a thread from a man describing his fiancée draining his savings, lying about work, and disappearing overnight. His details matched Brianna's age, her description, even her university. He didn't use her real name, but the pattern was unmistakable. He ended the post with a bitter line. She'll find someone else to bleed. Watch your bank account. My skin went cold. I wasn't just dealing with infidelity. I was dealing with someone who had a history of using relationships as stepping stones, taking what she needed until she found a better offer. And Curtis might not be the only one in the picture. The confirmation came 2 days later. A friend of mine, Darren, called me out of the blue. He didn't know anything about what had happened, but he said he'd spotted Brianna downtown with some guy I didn't recognize. Tall, dark jacket, acting cozy. Didn't want to tell you if it was nothing, but it looked weird. I thanked him, told him not to mention it to anyone else. Inside, I was boiling. Another man. Not Curtis, someone entirely new. I tried to hold the pieces together logically. Maybe it was a client. Maybe Darren was mistaken. But the more I thought about it, the more it fit. The late nights. The unexplained receipts. The way she'd grown nervous when I mentioned Curtis. She wasn't protecting Curtis. She was protecting the web. That night, I decided to test her again. She said she was staying late at work. I pretended to accept it, kissed her goodbye at the door. But instead of going home, I followed her. She didn't go to her office. She didn't even go near the tower. She drove across town to a quiet residential area, parked outside a townhouse, and let herself in. I sat there in the dark car, watching the lights come on, waiting for a silhouette to pass by the curtains. An hour later, I saw her with him. Not Curtis. Someone else. A younger man, maybe early 30s, fit, animated in his gestures. She laughed at something he said, touched his arm, leaned into him like she'd done with me when we first started dating. The rage that hit me was white hot. I nearly stormed up to the door, nearly shattered the facade. But again, the cold part of me held back. If I went now, I'd only get one answer. If I waited, I'd get them all. I went home that night with a plan. Curtis wasn't the problem alone. Neither was this new guy. The problem was Brianna, and the lies she'd stacked so high she thought no one could see over them. But she didn't realize I was already standing on the roof. The next morning, I sifted through her purse while she showered. I wasn't proud of it, but pride was already gone from this relationship. Inside, I found receipts, not just for restaurants, but for hotel bookings. One in particular stood out, a mid-range hotel downtown, one I knew Curtis had checked into for conferences more than once. She hadn't even bothered to hide it well. I copied the dates, cross-referenced them with her so-called late nights. They matched perfectly, but the most damning piece wasn't a receipt. It was a bank transfer notification. A deposit had been made from our joint account into a separate account under a name I didn't recognize. Not Curtis. Not her. Some alias. A shell. She was moving money. By the time Friday rolled around, my entire view of her had shifted. I wasn't looking at my fiancée anymore. I was looking at a con artist in a nice dress, weaving her story until it collapsed under its own weight. The final twist that week came from someone I hadn't expected. Dana. I found her through Curtis's LinkedIn. His profile listed him as married, even though he hadn't shown a ring. I cross-searched his wife's name until I found her. An attorney. Sharp-eyed, successful, respected in her field. I hesitated before reaching out. What if I was wrong? What if she already knew? But my hand moved before my head caught up, and I sent a short, careful message. We need to talk. It's about Curtis and my fiancée. I think you know why. She replied within an hour. Meet me. Tomorrow. Noon. The way she agreed so quickly told me everything. When we finally sat down across from each other at a coffee shop, she looked exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes, hands trembling around her cup. She didn't waste time. You're not the first fiancé Brianna has done this to, she said flatly. The words punched me harder than anything else had. I leaned back, stunned. Dana explained that she'd dug into Curtis's phone bills months ago, traced numbers, found Brianna's name long before I had. But when she confronted Curtis, he brushed it off, spun lies so carefully that she doubted herself. Only when she started hearing the same name pop up from other men in whispered conversations did she realize the scope of it. Brianna wasn't just cheating. She was building overlapping lives, taking from each one what she needed: money, gifts, connections, security. And now, Dana and I were tangled in the same net. That night, I lay awake again, staring at the ceiling, the pieces falling into place. Brianna wasn't a fiancée. She was a fraud. Curtis wasn't her only accomplice, nor was the younger man. There could be more. The keys Curtis had left behind weren't just to his apartment. They were to another door, another secret I hadn't unlocked yet. But I would. Because this wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was a game, and I intended to win. By the time the next week rolled around, I'd stopped seeing Brianna as a person I loved. She was a suspect, a fraud, and I was done playing the passive fiancé, waiting to be humiliated again. Dana and I met twice more in secret. She brought her meticulous notes, dates, credit card charges, gaps in Curtis's schedule, and I brought mine. Side by side, our timelines aligned like crooked teeth finally snapping into place. Nights Brianna claimed to be working late matched perfectly with nights Curtis traveled for conferences. Weekends she spent with me overlapped suspiciously with weekends she claimed to be visiting her sister out of town. Weekends Curtis's phone GPS data, which Dana had somehow pulled through her legal contacts, placed him in the same areas. But the kicker wasn't just Curtis. Dana leaned across the cafe table one afternoon, her voice low. You mentioned another man. I nodded. Younger. I saw her with him. She's not just splitting time between you and me. She's multiplying it. Dana stared into her coffee, her jaw tightening. Then she's more reckless than I thought. We made a decision. If Brianna was bold enough to lie to both of us, to juggle Curtis, to siphon money, to toy with multiple men, Then she needed to be caught in the act. Not hearsay, not suspicions. Hard proof. I set the bait. That Thursday, I told Brianna I had a last-minute business trip. I packed a bag, kissed her forehead, and left the apartment like any other morning. She waved cheerfully from the door, acting like a devoted partner, sending her man off to work. But instead of driving to the airport, I circled back, parking 2 blocks away from our building. From the trunk, I pulled out the equipment I'd borrowed from a tech-savvy friend. A pair of discrete cameras, motion-triggered, synced to my phone. I'd planted one in the living room weeks ago, hidden in the hollow of a decorative vase she never touched. The other, I installed that morning, tucked into the corner of the hallway, giving me a clear view of the front door and the balcony. Then I waited. At 7:42 p.m., the feed lit up. The door opened, and Curtis walked in. His badge jingled on his belt, the same one I still had a copy of from the night he dropped it. Brianna threw her arms around him like she'd been starving all week. He kissed her, laughed, poured himself a drink from the whiskey I'd bought. I clenched my fists but stayed put. Evidence first. They settled on the couch, talking too quietly for the mic to catch everything. But then Curtis said something that made my blood run cold. Once he's out of the way, you and I can finally stop hiding. She smiled, didn't deny it. Out of the way. I didn't know if Curtis meant figuratively, a breakup, or something darker, but the phrasing stuck with me. At 9:13 p.m., the door opened again. Another man walked in. Not Curtis. Not me. The younger guy. The one I'd seen at the townhouse. The camera caught it all. The way Brianna's smile froze. The way Curtis shot to his feet, demanding what he was doing there. The younger man shouted back, accusing her of lying about being single, about being exclusive. Brianna tried to calm them both, but Curtis shoved him, sending him sprawling into the coffee table. The younger man stood up, face red, fists clenched. You said he didn't exist, he shouted. She said I didn't exist, Curtis roared back. And then Curtis punched him. The fight was sloppy, desperate. Furniture tipped, glasses shattered. Brianna screamed for them to stop. But the cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of her carefully constructed empire collapsing into fists and broken glass. I saved the footage. That night, I met Dana again. We sat in her car, watching the replay on my phone. When Curtis threw the first punch, she didn't flinch. She just shook her head. I warned him, she muttered. I told him one day, one of these women would blow his life up. Guess I didn't think it would be yours. I told her about the bank transfers, the fake account. Her eyebrows lifted. She's not just cheating, Dana said slowly. She's committing fraud. If she's using joint funds, if she's creating shell accounts, she could face real charges. The thought hadn't fully formed in my head until she said it. This wasn't just about broken trust or bruised egos. This was criminal. And suddenly, I realized, that might be my real leverage. The next morning, Brianna acted like nothing had happened. She kissed me goodbye again, smiled, told me she was meeting with her team after work. There wasn't a scratch on her. No bruises from breaking up the fight. No hint of the chaos I'd watched unfold on my screen. She was doubling down, pretending her entire world wasn't one shove away from collapse. I decided to push back, not directly, not yet. Instead, I followed Curtis. He wasn't subtle anymore. He drove to Brianna's office in broad daylight, parked in her spot, and strolled inside like he owned it. 2 hours later, he emerged, hand in hand with Brianna. They got into his car and drove to lunch. Not sneaking, not hiding, public. Either they thought I was gone, or they believed I was too stupid to see what was in front of me. I snapped photos. Every angle, every touch, every stolen glance. Then I followed them to the hotel downtown. They checked in. I didn't need to see more. Instead of confronting them there, I drove straight to Dana's office. She was waiting for me. When I laid the photos on her desk, she didn't look surprised. He's getting sloppy, she said. Good. That makes him easier to destroy. Together, we started building a case. Her legal mind, my surveillance. Receipts, footage, financial transfers, eyewitness accounts. Piece by piece, we created a dossier that showed Brianna for what she was, a liar, a manipulator, a thief. But we both knew it wasn't enough yet. The final push came from the keys Curtis had dropped on my coffee table weeks before. On a hunch, I tested them against different locks, his apartment, his office, even the storage unit address I found in his emails. Thank you, Dana's contact at the telecom company. The storage unit opened. Inside were boxes. Not random junk, not seasonal clothes. Boxes of documents. Receipts, invoices, contracts. And tucked between them, a folder labeled with Brianna's alias, the same fake name tied to the bank account. I flipped through the pages, each one more damning than the last. Joint accounts siphoned, transfers disguised as consulting fees, even a forged signature on a loan agreement. She wasn't just double-timing me and Curtis. She was building a financial safety net at the expense of everyone she touched. By the time I left that storage unit, my plan was clear. She thought she was playing three men against each other. She thought she could smile, kiss, and lie her way through anything. But now, she was walking into a trap none of her excuses could escape. The night before the final confrontation, I sat in the apartment with her, pretending everything was normal. She curled up on the couch beside me, scrolling through her phone, humming softly. I studied her face, the curve of her smile, the little details I'd once thought were beautiful. Now all I saw were tells. The way her eyes flicked away when I asked about her day. The way her hands trembled slightly when I mentioned Curtis's name. The way she kissed me goodnight, but her lips didn't linger. She thought she had me fooled. She had no idea she was about to lose everything. The trap was set the moment I agreed to attend Brianna's carefully orchestrated family dinner. She wanted it to be a rehearsal of sorts, a chance for her parents to toast us as the perfect couple, a performance for relatives who rarely saw us together. She imagined herself at the center of the stage, glowing in borrowed admiration. I imagined something else. By then, Dana and I had compiled everything. The footage of Curtis slipping into my apartment at 7:42 p.m. The moment another man barged in, shouting, accusing. The fist fight, the glass breaking, Brianna caught between them with her lies cracking wide open. Add to that the receipts, the forged documents, the money trail. Enough evidence to crush her in a courtroom, let alone in front of her family. All I had to do was choose the stage. The night arrived. Brianna dressed to impress, a red silk dress she reserved for moments when she wanted the room to orbit her. She dabbed perfume on her wrists, hummed as she clipped on earrings. She kissed my cheek like nothing had ever gone wrong between us. On the drive to her parents' house, she squeezed my hand and whispered, "You'll see tonight. They'll finally understand why I chose you." The irony nearly made me laugh. When we pulled into the driveway, her parents greeted us with open arms. Aunts, uncles, cousins. The dining room buzzed with chatter, wine glasses clinking, plates being passed. I played my role well, smiling, polite, warm, until dessert. That's when I stood up, raised my glass, and said, "Before we toast, I'd like to share something Brianna and I have been working on. It's a little highlight reel of our relationship." Her smile froze. "Elliot, maybe another time." But I'd already tapped my phone. The TV flickered to life. The video played. Curtis stepping into our apartment. Brianna embracing him. His voice. "Once he's out of the way, you and I can finally stop hiding." Gasps rippled around the table. Her mother covered her mouth. Her father's wine glass clattered onto the tablecloth, red staining white. Then the younger man appeared in the footage, shouting, accusing her of lying. The fistfight broke out. Brianna's voice screamed from the speakers. By the time the video ended, the room was dead silent. I didn't look at her. I looked at her parents. "This is the woman you've been celebrating." Her father turned to her, face ashen. "Tell me this isn't true." Brianna's composure shattered. "It's not. Elliot edited it. He's trying to make me look." But then another voice cut through the chaos. Dana's. She stepped into the dining room, folder in hand. She'd timed her entrance perfectly. "He didn't edit anything. And if you need more proof, here are the financial records. Your daughter forged a loan under her father's name. She's been transferring money out of Elliot's account into a shell account. She's been doing this for years." The room erupted. Aunts whispering, cousins staring, her mother weeping silently into her napkin. Brianna spun on me, eyes blazing. "You brought her here? You planned this?" I didn't flinch. "No, Brianna. You planned this. I just let it run." And then came the final blow. The younger man stormed in. Someone had tipped him off. Maybe Dana, maybe one of Brianna's other burned bridges. He didn't wait for permission. He shoved the door open, pointed at her, and shouted, "You told me you weren't engaged. You said he was just your landlord." The room went chaotic. Her parents gasped. Her cousins recoiled. Her father nearly collapsed into his chair. Curtis appeared next, barging in after the younger man, his tie loose, his face pale. "Brianna, what the hell is this?" Now all three stood there. Curtis, the younger man, me, the men she played like chess pieces. Except the board was overturned, the pieces broken, the game finished. Her family watched, stunned, as her lies converged in real time. She tried to salvage it. "Listen, please, it's not what it looks like," she pleaded, voice cracking. "I was trying to protect us. I was scared. I needed security. I needed." But Dana stepped forward, cutting her off with surgical precision. "You needed money. And attention. And backup plans for your backup plans. That's not security. That's fraud. And you're going to answer for it." Brianna's father pushed back his chair, his face hard. "You forged my name?" She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. That silence said everything. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Her parents disowned her on the spot. her father swearing he'd press charges for forgery. The younger man stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Curtis tried to plead with Dana, but she handed him divorce papers right there in the dining room, in front of everyone. As for me, I placed the engagement ring on the table, slid it toward Brianna, and said nothing. Her tears started then, but not the kind I'd once thought were real. These were survival tears, the sound of a cornered liar watching her empire collapse. Her father ordered her to leave his house. She stumbled into the night alone, mascara streaking her face, her dress wrinkled, her once perfect image shattered. The consequences didn't end there. Within a week, Curtis was suspended from his company, pending an internal investigation. Dana leaked enough of the evidence to force the board's hand. The hotel receipts, the misuse of company funds, the scandal of a manager sleeping with employees, it all snowballed. His career was effectively over. The younger man disappeared from the picture entirely, though I heard whispers later that he'd filed a small claims suit against Brianna for money she'd borrowed and never repaid. As for Brianna, she lost everything. Her job fired her after Dana sent them proof of financial misconduct. Her parents cut her off completely, even changing locks on the family home when she tried to come back. She was left with no apartment, no fiancé, no career, no allies. And the legal side loomed like a storm. Her father pressed charges for forgery. Dana filed for divorce, citing adultery and financial deception. And I closed our joint accounts, froze access, and made sure every cent she tried to siphon was flagged for review. She called me once. 47 missed calls, 1 voicemail. Her voice hoarse, begging me not to ruin her life. But the truth was simple. She had already ruined it herself. The story ended not with revenge, but with silence. I never confronted her again. Never shouted. Never demanded apologies. I simply watched from a distance as every lie, every scheme, every betrayal pulled her down until there was nothing left to hold on to. And in the wreckage, I found something unexpected. Relief. Because the truth, brutal as it was, had freed me from a future I never deserved to live. And that's the story. If you're still here, that means you're one of us. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button. I drop new chaos every single day, and trust me, tomorrow's story, it's even worse than this one.